The universe was not young, but the time was long before today. Long before the Autobots and Decepticons. Long before the 13. And even before Cybertron. Primus and Unicron remained at war, though Unicron had the upper hand. As an agent of chaos, Unicron was superior at hand-to-hand combat to Primus. Primus, however, had the upper hand in his cunning. Primus had developed the idea of the Grand Plan, the idea that he would have to end the conflict between his brother and himself by forcing each other into a state of slumber, and create life that would serve as the defenders of Primus, and who would eventually eliminate Unicron once and for all. First, Primus had to make sure he could create life in the first place. Thus, he began. Using the godly powers within him, Primus created a body. He took a small part of his own essence and put it into the body. This was called a spark, and it mirrored the life forces within both Primus and Unicron. Primus took more of his essence and turned it into a source of energy, letting it flow within the body. This was the first energon in its purified state, the lifeblood of Primus himself. Primus infused the body with knowledge and sentience, giving the body a personality. Primus had done it. Primus had created life. This was Priman. Primus intended Priman to be a great leader. Thus, he created an object to signify that power. Primus took the part of him that could create life and etched it as a program, called the Primal Program, onto a crystal. Primus then put it into a container and gave it to Priman to be a symbol of his leadership. This was the creation of the Matrix of Leadership, or at least an incarnation of it. We'll get into other Matrix variations later. Primus intended Priman to also use the Matrix of Leadership to create life once Primus was locked into a slumber. Thus, Priman also holds the name of the Alpha Prime. With life created, Primus was set on the Grand Plan. With the road to the Grand Plan established, Primus had a vision of the future. There would one day come an apocalyptic battle that would dictate the fate of the Grand Plan, and should Primus's creations fail, so would the Grand Plan. The battle for the future had several names: Point Omega, the Omega Point, and the Chakaract. Primus decided to create beings to wait in preparation for the event to help the children of Primus rule. Near the ancient, dead world of Methuselah, a moon orbited. This was Protos. Primus decided to work on a skill that he needed for his grand plan, creating a planet of metal. Primus cyberformed Protos over the course of 300,000 years. Protos had become a metal planet. Primus then created his guardians for the Omega Point. These were the Covenant. The first, and their leader, was Leonicus, followed by Virgol, Libras, Scorpius, Sagittari, Capricorn, Equator, Pisor, Ariex, Torotron, Geminator, and Cansix. Primus then gave the Covenant the tools they needed to be the proper guardians of the Grand Plan and Primus's future children, the Sanctuary. Built on Protos, the Sanctuary included a decontamination room, the Reflectorium, a chamber for self-meditation, the Theosaurium, a chamber for theological discussion and debate, the Stentorium, where the Covenant met in a council called the Zemstvo, the Armory, containing warships and divine weapons, the most powerful army in the multiverse, and lastly, the Observatory, where cloaked spy satellites across the multiverse send the Covenant information. The Covenant would live in the Sanctuary in preparation for the Omega Point. Primus and Unicron continued their battle, shifting through the multiverse and the various planes of reality. Primus ultimately went through with his sacrifice. He positioned them both in position during a fight in the astral plane, then shifted back into the physical plane. During this shift, the consciousness of Primus and Unicron became trapped in two planetoids. This, Primus thought, was the end. The beings of order and chaos were trapped. The multiverse could continue in peace, and all was well. All was not well. Unicron could not be defeated so easily. He began to psionically transform his planetoid body into a massive monster metal planet who continued to traverse the multiverse to consume other planets. Primus began to continue to go through his grand plan, turning himself into a larger planet. Appearing in various different realities at once, this planet form looked differently across the multiverse, sometimes being organic, other times being metal. For the most part, this planet was an organic planet that, as Primus grew, turned into metal. This planet would forevermore be known as Cybertron. At some point around 9 billion years ago, Unicron developed the ability to transform his planetary body into a massive robot form. In reaction, Primus began the creation of what we know as the 13. The 13 original Transformers, 7 of them holding the title of Prime, were to be created. The universe where they originated was one in the Tyran cluster of universes, a universe known by its shorthand, the live-action movie universe. Cybertron had not yet become metal in this universe. Instead, there existed an alien race known only as the Creators. We know little of the Creators, but we do know that they went from planet to planet, using a device called the Seed to destroy the organic life on the planet and create a special metal called transformium. One planet destroyed in such a manner was Earth, which experienced a vast extinction of its life forms known as dinosaurs. The Creators harvested this metal and, for unknown reasons, brought it to Cybertron, turning it into a metal world. Primus would take part of his life force and turn it into an object of life-giving power, the Allspark Cube. Intending to create a race of beings to serve as explorers, the Creators took the Allspark, and from the cube came the dynasty of Primes, the 13 original Transformers. At this point, the Creators disappear from the history books, as they are a plot point to be developed in future live-action movie continuity stories. The first was Prima, which is oftentimes pronounced Prima, the Warrior of Light, chosen to be the leader of the 13 in their endeavors to defeat Unicron. Prima grew from the Allspark-infused ground of Cybertron and, along with his brothers and sister, was given the gift of transformation from Primus as a mirror to Unicron's own transformation ability. Prima had been described as distant from his siblings, being weighed down with the burden of leadership. Next came Vector Prime. He was appointed by Primus as the guardian of space and time. Vector Prime would record events across his domain. Then there was Megatronus, created to oversee entropy, the ordered dissolution of all things. With this domain, Megatronus could unmake creation with focus, and would eventually break down and become obsessed with these dark sciences. Nexus Prime was created to be the guardian of rarefied energon, the type of energon Primus uses to turn his essence into sparks. There was a limited supply of rarefied energon, and without it, there would be no more Transformer life throughout the multiverse. Logos Prime had the power of space and time just like Vector Prime, though he exceeded Vector Prime in skill in that field. Logos was a very social Transformer. Micronus Prime was the subspecies of Transformer, the first Minicon. Micronus Prime deeply cared for all living things, even non-Transformers. When Prima was created to symbolize what was good and heroic, Liege Maximo was created to serve as his opposite, to create a balance. What Primus wanted was not the elimination of evil, but the balance and coexistence between good and evil. Thus, we have Liege Maximo. The story of Liege Maximo is that of tragedy. Liege Maximo was predisposed to be evil, yet the rest of the 13 deeply cared for him. Liege Maximo would repeatedly do actions that suggested that there was good in him, that no matter what we were made for, our lives are not dictated by fate, but by the story we make into existence. However, Liege Maximo would succumb to his inner evils, but at this time, he would live in peace with his brothers and sister, telling them great stories of Primon and the Covenant. But how Liege Maximo knew of them while the others did not will be covered later. Solus Prime was the first female Transformer, and used her forge to create weapons for the 13. Among these was the Star Saber Sword, which Primus gifted the Origin Matrix to Prima, and the Origin Matrix served as the hilt of the Star Saber. Epistemus embodied knowledge, and had an unconventional way of thinking. Autonomous Maximus was described as a lonely sentinel. Like the Covenant, Autonomous Maximus was created by Primus in preparation for an event. The event in which Primus would be fully deceased and unable to help his creations. Autonomous Maximus would wait for the Chosen One and be its guardian. Due to his depressing purpose, Autonomous Maximus ultimately rid himself of his emotions and soon, his own name. Solomus was known for his kindness and wisdom. He also may have later taken up the name of Alpha Trion. Little is known of Onyx Prime, but we do know that he was the first Transformer to possess a beast mode. Alchemist Prime was the last, and possibly the happiest of the 13, and manipulated chemical properties. Each of the 13 had a device called a sarcophagus, which they could use to traverse dimensions, something some of the members of the 13 would later incorporate into their own bodies. Now, after introducing each of the 13, let's go back on topic. Liege Maximo somehow knew of the existence of Primon and the Covenant, and left the 13 for a time and found Primon. Upon their encounter, Liege Maximo ripped the Matrix of Leadership out of the Alpha Prime's chest and brought it to Prima, who accepted it as a symbol of his leadership from Primus, possibly never realizing the means it came to him by. Nonetheless, the 13 lived in peace and harmony, with only small underlying tensions. They also prepared for their eventual fight with Unicron at this time. Also, at some point, the 13 visited planet Earth in a non-specific universal stream, inspiring Greek mythology. But due to time, we won't cover that now. Eventually, they came upon the realization that the energon flowing within the Allspark cube was not infinite, and that it took energy of suns to keep its power running to keep the life force of Cybertron alive, to secure future generations of Transformers. The Allspark responded, however, to aid the 13 to find adequate suns. The Allspark created two types of Transformers out of the Transformium: Seekers and Construction Drones. The Seekers were made to find or seek out suns, while the construction drones were to be used to build devices called star harvesters that would absorb the suns to create Allspark-compatible energon. The Allspark also created a key to activate the star harvesters. The 13 called this the Matrix of Leadership, after the actual Matrix of Leadership in Prima's possession. Among these new Transformers were Cybertronians who had Prima's heritage, and thus were considered the next generation of Primes. Among these were Sentinel and Optimus. Among the Seekers included an order of knights that owed their forms to the dinosaurs of Earth. These Dinobots were led by Prima's descendant, Optimus. As suns began to be harvested, Prima proposed one rule: no sun would be destroyed if it sustained life in the system it was in. Megatronus continued his study of dark sciences, and in this time with the Allspark cube, he began to feel that the Allspark was speaking to him. Megatronus also got steadily more jealous of his fellow brothers and sister. Ultimately, he broke Prima's rule and destroyed a sun to a life-sustaining world. This caused the 13 Primes to institute a new rule: all members of the 13 have to be present at the activating of a solar harvester. Megatronus continued his efforts of greed, handpicking several Seekers and construction drones to serve under him. They were to go behind the backs of the 13 and continue Megatronus's machinations. Thus, they were to be called the Decepticons. And Megatronus took up the title of the first Decepticon. Megatronus and his Decepticons went to a planet where a solar harvester was created, and Megatronus created a fake Matrix key to activate it. However, the fake did not work well, and the harvester backfired, filling Megatronus with primal energies. His last vestiges of sanity were gone. When the 13 found out about this, they ousted their brother, and he was known forevermore as the Fallen. With his last bit of sanity gone, the Fallen went to a source of the dark sciences he had studied previously. Now, with no more restraint holding him back, the Fallen went to the Chaosbringer himself, Unicron. And thus began the war that would splinter the 13 original Transformers apart. That's the story for another